Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. You can go there Tuesday for all the final cuts of every team, one-stop shopping, get some analysis on all those cuts, etc. I have a story up that ran, I believe it was on Friday, that was about the quest for a quarterback since Kirk Cousins left. I mean, this has been a few decade quest here, folks. Anyway, the story was up on ESPN.com and how maybe now they found their guy. Anyway, you can see the guy next to me. That's Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. And we're going to talk a little bit about not so much the final preseason game, but maybe who helped themselves and taking a look at a little bit at the roster going at, after the preseason is over. So, Bram, thanks as always for joining me. And I guess you're back in your little bunker at home.
Yeah. Let me explain that real quick. I apologize because, when I typically do this with you, I'm in a different part of my house, which I've set up since the pandemic to be studio-ish, but we're under construction here. So I'm sequestered to this little dungeon down here when I do this. So for those of you watching on YouTube, apologize for the ridiculous, what looks like a hostage video right now.
Yeah. I mean, so anyway, there you go. There's the explanation. So let's start with the game tonight that was played tonight, and not going over the game, but a couple of things that stood out. What stood out most to you, whether it's a player or anything like that?
A couple things, I think, and we'll get into a lot of this. I was really encouraged by and Rivera mentioned this after the game, that, there were 6 or 7 guys we wanted to see. He wasn't specific about who they are, but we can take a pretty good guess at who they are at certain positions. And I felt like the competition was ramped up. Like these guys realized, that there was a lot on the line. That's a very encouraging thing to see. It was really fun to watch. The back end corner spot, which is, I think there's only one of them really available, maybe 2, but probably one, got very jumbled for me after watching tonight, frankly. I think because I think there are guys like, and I don't think Jace Whitaker will make it, and I don't think Nick Whiteside will make it, but Nick Whiteside played extremely well, like in the second half. And, we've got Christian Holmes and Rashad Wildgoose, and then these other 2 guys that I just named. And suddenly I just think the decisions got harder. That's all. I think the decision. You don't?
No, because of Holmes' special teams ability. I just don't see. I
agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But you're asking, like, what did I see tonight? I saw guys competing like their careers are on the line. And that's always extremely encouraging when you see that.
That's the fun thing with the third game.
And then the other one is, I think receiver was eye-opening tonight. Like, we've talked a lot about Kaz Allen needs to kind of prove his worth as a returner. And Rivera downplayed the muffed punt, but it wasn't just a muffed punt. I mean, it's a muffed punt inside your own 10. He also fair caught a punt at the 6-yard line. Like, you're either returning that or you're letting that bounce. Like, I was surprised at that one. He dropped a couple passes. I'm not going to kill him on those, but it wasn't a great night for a final, hey, I need to be here. And then Mitchell Tinsley, who London Fletcher was telling me loves him. I know the coaches really like him, has really stood out. But for me, it's like, I don't see room for him just because of how many veterans are on the roster. But you want to make a final impression on somebody, he made a really good one tonight, like a really, really good one tonight. And I know it's someone that they've been very high on and they really like, and I assume will be on the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster. But again, I think he's made these decisions tough. Like, I don't think Jared Patterson's going to make the team, but you know how I feel about him. Like, every time I watch him, I'm like, I wish he would get more of an opportunity because he just makes plays. He keeps getting better. He plays bigger than he is. He even said to us afterwards, you were there, game's slowing down for him. It's obvious that it is. He keeps improving. The guy's a fighter. So I've liked all of that. Like, the guys who know the odds are really stacked against them made it harder on the coaches. And it may not have changed anybody's minds, but they made it harder. And I always like to see that.
Well, I think what I always like to see, because I never like to hear like, well, the game means nothing, because it means everything to these guys. And it's really, and even Jarrett said it, other guys will say it, it's putting stuff on film. That's what they're doing. So whether it's good enough for here or not, it'll be good enough for somebody. And the other thing that we're going to run into, Bram, is the whole talk about like, oh, in my time covering this team, it's been a long time. And I can't remember the last time they actually lost somebody that they cut that they had wanted to keep. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. That's always a
like,
fear that is really unfounded. I agree.
There's a Mitchell Tinsley on every roster right now.
I agree.
And I'm not like picking on him. I'm just saying, like, and there was a Kaz Allen on every roster. There's those guys that you say like, oh, he did this. How can you expose him? Well, the bottom line, like, in Tinsley, the hard part for him will be special teams, and we can get into more of the stuff. But I do, what you want to see are guys make plays, and he showed up, and that's good for him.
He did,
because it's one step at a time. Like Jeremy Reeves kept showing up for years, and eventually he got his spot. It's just like same with Jared. He's going to always be there. Guys like, the Jonathan Williams, the Gores, like they just need to keep putting out good film so they can get picked up, whether it's here or somewhere, to keep. If you're like, that's the third, like a guy again with Patterson, he's always going to be like right there. And you just need that one opportunity to push you over to get a bigger opportunity. So that's why, like, I always like that last game to see who kind of makes those plays.
Yeah. All of those guys really stood out to me tonight. I think the back end of the defensive line room is very interesting. I didn't see much that changed my, like these other guys. I felt like put something out there to at least put a bug in the coach's ears to go reconsider whatever the final decisions are. And whether anything changes or not, who knows, and that's up to them. I just think Rivera and the coach's jobs got harder tonight, but that's a good thing. It should get harder tonight. The back end of the defensive line room is very complicated. Like, how many people are they going
What would you do? 10 or 11?
Okay. Well, the first thing I need to know is Fedarian Mathis healthy enough to play in week 1? And if he's not, how long before he is able to play? Because therein lies the answer to one spot. If he's not available to them and they feel like they should put him on, short-term IR or something like that, well, that opens up a spot for somebody else to make the team and be on the team. But I kind of, every time I do the count and I include him, assuming he is healthy, but that again is an open question, and I do count him, I see 2 to 3 spots for 4 players that are all deserving to be there. And that's why I don't know what they're going to do. James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill, Andre Jones, and KJ Henry. And KJ Henry, for me, on that list would be number 4, but he is a draft pick for them.
They don't cut their draft picks.
They don't. And so that's why I think this is very complicated. We know who the starting front 4 are. Ridgway's primary backup defensive tackle. Mathis is 2 if he's healthy enough, which I think is what could be, interesting. It could be interesting in terms of how they kind of salvage keeping somebody around. And then F.A. Obata, I'm assuming, is going to make the team.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're running out of spots for all these guys we just named. So how many are they keeping? Are they keeping 10? Are they keeping 11? Maybe. Is this an unbalanced roster where it's 26 on defense, 24 on offense? Do they have to keep 10, 11 offensive linemen because they don't want to lose everybody? Like, they got to crunch. And then, I don't think this is going to change anything, but you're going to laugh because I've talked to you all camp about this. Jake Fromm has had a terrific training camp. He was terrific late in the Baltimore game. He was terrific again tonight. I don't think this changes anything. We know who the number 1 quarterback is, and we know who the number 2 quarterback is. The question is, would they keep 3? Well, if they keep 3, then all of these other positions that we're talking about that are crowded that we need to find room for, one of them has to go by the wayside. So I think they have a lot of difficult decisions to make, really.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if they kept 3 quarterbacks.
So would I. But really I tell you, again, you want to talk about pretty good film from somebody who's kind of emerging. Fromm looks very comfortable in this offense, has played really well. And you guys laughed at me early in camp when I said, if I told you, that this guy, if you watched him in practice, was the primary backup, I don't know why you wouldn't believe me. So, but because of the situation they're in and because they have a numbers crunch, I don't think they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, but he's played his way into deserving consideration for it.
He has, but and it's funny because you see a lot of, they should have him as a backup over Jacoby. No, there's a difference there. And you always have to keep in mind, for people who would say
I don't think that's happening, by the way.
It's I'm
not even laying the groundwork for something like that.
It's not even close to happening. But you have to remember, who he's he's done a nice job, but he's
Yes, he
going to
has.
be, but he's been exposed on practice squad many times and he's still always there. And
Yes,
so
and
like
he'll be on this
they're going to feel
practice squad
pretty
because he's their third quarterback, and you
right.
have to have a third
Nobody's
quarterback
going to
around, so
put
he'll be
him on
there.
the act.
Yes.
Yeah. So he'll be there for them and you can put him on there. I do think, Bram, you brought up an interesting point about Mathis, because if you go, let's say you go 11 defensive linemen and then you get, so you have your initial 53 and you have 11. Well, then you put him on short-term IR. Now you can take, if you only have 4 linebackers, maybe bring up a 5th. And that's done for special teams. And this is where it gets interesting. And I'm going to talk about this on Monday as well. So I don't need to go too much into depth. Is really those last couple of spots are about special teams. So if you're, when you look at like for you, how many, I'll ask you, and I can tell people on my thoughts on Monday, but for you, how many receivers are you taking? Well, I guess who are the last 2 receiver spots? Because the first 4 are obvious.
Yeah, the first 4 are obvious. I have felt for a number of weeks Kaz Allen would get one because, they're giving him most of the opportunities on returns these days. They're basically laid the groundwork for, we want somebody who might be explosive in the return game, and consistently the concern has been just ball security, specifically on punts. And he had a huge mistake tonight. And fortunately it's in a game that doesn't count. Unfortunately, they recovered it. But like that, I mean, I know Rivera downplayed it, but the second it happened, I went, oh
yeah.
man, this is going to make this decision very, very hard, because they have guys who can perform the job, but really don't have explosive tendencies in the return game. And I know that they want to elevate that. I don't think they want to cut Dax Milne, but we're running out of room here. Like, we're just running out of room. I don't think they want to cut Pringle, but we're running out of room. So are they literally keeping 7? Okay, if they are, which group is short? Does that mean Alex Arma doesn't make the 53 when we thought he was? Because there clearly appears to be some kind of defined role for a fullback here, and he's the only one out there that plays that role for them. So I think they have, this is the hardest cut down to kind of gauge in the Rivera era, and it's not close. And in the end, we are talking about guys that are back into the roster that are not expected, without a lot of injuries, being consistent contributors. But it is the sign that they have a much deeper roster, because there are legitimate players that are going to get cut. And to your point, most of them will not get picked up by other teams, but they're deserving of a roster spot. There's just not enough room for them.
So let's go over, and we can talk a little bit about this now. With receiver, and this is where people have to keep in mind, like, and you're right about Kaz. The thing with Kaz Allen too, he didn't do this in college. So they have to learn how to trust him. They need to know that they can trust him. So he fields a punt at the 10-yard line last week, and that was a good step, but it's the first time they saw that. Then he had one today, like you said, at the 6, you could let it go in, you could return, whatever. He fair catches it. And then, so he 33%, one of 3 kicks inside the 10, he fumbled. That's the area where they're going to define how you are as a returner. Because the number one thing is ball security. They need to be able to trust you to put you back there. Now, the one thing that's to their benefit is it was not a good night for him. Nobody's going to, I can't imagine anybody picks him up and puts him on the roster. So you want to keep him and develop him as a returner. You can do that. And at some point, I would expect him to be ready this year. So then it comes down to, then what else do you do? Well, you need a returner. People aren't going to like it, but that'll be Dax Milne right now, right? And so if he makes
Pringle,
it,
I suppose Pringle potentially could do it.
But the difference is, like, Pringle did some in college, but not a lot. And Milne has done that for them. They need to know that they can trust you, and they know with him, he's going to catch the ball. Not going to get a lot of yards. We know that, but he can catch the ball and he can play multiple receiver spots, et cetera. So while people may, like a guy like Tinsley had a nice night, but he doesn't really help you on special teams.
I agree.
That's the problem. So that's where, the other one is Alex Arma. So it would not shock me one bit if they cut him initially, and then bring him back after they make a subsequent move to free up a roster spot, because you're trying to protect something else, right? So when all these practice squads get set, it's just, more moves get made. So if he doesn't make it initially, he will be out there because they do have a role for him. And, but people have to remember, like, the initial 53 is not the final 53. It's just the first move in the first wave, because it could be a guy like, okay, you cut this guy and then you put Mathis on IR. And now it opens up a spot, and somebody always gets hurt in the first week or two that creates another spot. So it's a fluid thing, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me there. And there's
also cuts from 31 other teams.
Right.
And there are a couple of spots on this team where if there's a surprise out there that they may have some interest in it. Like that's not unusual either. Like Ridgeway got cut, late last year as a draft pick of the Cowboys. They went and grabbed him, and he's turned out to be a valuable backup for them. Yeah. And at times when they do this Cinco package thing, he was a valuable starter for them in that package. So,
and he'll help them there again.
If there
is
a surprise at a couple of very specific position groups, like maybe a linebacker or maybe an offensive lineman, that wouldn't surprise me. Like then all of a sudden, if they feel like there's an upgrade, and then like on offensive line, this one's really tricky too. How many are they actually keeping? If they I'm assuming they're going to keep Braden Daniels, and obviously Cornelius Lucas is their backup tackle. Well, if they're not comfortable playing Daniels in a game, does that force them to keep Trent Scott? And if they keep Trent Scott, well, then who are they cutting? And how many offensive linemen are they keeping? Because 11 would be a lot at that position group, and would mean someone like Arma would have to be cut because there's just not enough room for everybody.
Right.
I think they're in a very tricky spot, but this is a good problem. Really. It really is.
Well, it is. And now again, I keep saying with Arma, if it happens, I would be really surprised if he doesn't wind up back on the roster with the offensive line. The funny thing is the one thing for them, because they're not going to cut Daniels. And the one thing I will say is he actually, when I watched him against the Bengals, now you're going to get his fourth quarter of the third preseason game, but he looked better than he did in practice. And he's progressed enough that they can say, okay, he warrants a spot because he was a draft pick, but you don't want him going in a game just yet. And that's a problem. So what do you do? But it's not like Trent Scott was wowing anybody. And that's,
but you need adequate backups at the position.
No. But that's why the waiver wire at that spot will be interesting. Cause I do agree with you. I think that's a spot where you have to say, you're going to need some more help there. And it's rare someone cuts a valuable left or right tackle, which is why the Cardinals traded one, preemptively. Right. But you never know. Again, you just never know. Every other team, we're not following it that closely, have some of these same problems, and all of a sudden there's a surprising name that just kind of pops up that might have been on this team's radar, and they go grab them. So this could be a weird week, I agree with you. The first 53 is not the final 53. Let's see what happens after the waiver wire and how they protect people and try to avoid them falling into the hands of another team. And then we'll see what the 53 looks like against Arizona. It's going to be a little bit different for sure. Yeah. And so that'll be but the line will be interesting as well, because it is, with the way Stromberg has played, part of you thinks, well, would they go 9? But they're going to keep 3 centers. I'd be really surprised if they don't. I think
so, but Tyler Larson, if you do the numbers, all of a sudden is the odd man out in a situation like that. I don't believe they're going to release him, but again, it's how many people are you keeping? And at some point you have to make choices.
Well, and that's where, like I said, that's where the armor. So I would, 3 tight ends. I don't think Curtis Hodges has played himself onto there. Then I think because, see, if Kaz Allen had a really good night, then you might be looking at a situation where they'd want to keep 7 receivers. And I think because of his night, I think you can go with 6.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
20th Century Studios presents Vacation Friends 2. Now streaming only on Hulu.
Look at us, all together again. We just wanted to give you guys a real honeymoon.
Shots!
Now streaming.
He was just released from jail.
Where can I get a drink around here?
Back on vacation.
This place is nice. It's drug lord nice.
I'm sorry, drug lord nice?
With more baggage.
Ever since he showed up, he turned this relaxing vacation into total chaos. Who does that?
Vacation Friends 2, rated R, now streaming only on Hulu.
There is still time for one more family adventure this summer. The country's largest climbing and zipline park is open 7 days a week until Labor Day. With 8 different levels, 16 courses, 250 climbing obstacles, and over 4,000 feet of zip lines, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring, located in Montgomery County, Maryland, is the perfect place to spend the last few days of summer. Once you're back on the ground, head over to axe throwing and try one of their brand new games. You can play Battleship, Blackjack, throw at traditional targets, or even upload your own images. They are now accepting group and family reservations for this fall. Can't make it out before school is back in session? Not to worry. The Adventure Park is open Friday through Sunday every weekend this fall. To end the summer right, listeners of this show can now get $10 off any ticket by entering the promo code KEIM23DC at checkout. That's KEIM, K-E-I-M 23DC at checkout. There's still time to get outside and join the adventure at theadventurepark.com. For Kendall Fuller, I meant to mention this. I saw him briefly after the game. He's been dealing with a knee issue. We haven't seen him a whole lot recently, but I did kind of ask him, like, are you going to be ready for the opener? He kind of looked at me like, are you kidding? Of course I am. And he did, and I love Kendall. I think he's a smart. I like talking to him and all that.
I haven't gotten any hint from anybody with the team that there is anything serious there. No. There is concern about McLaurin for week 1. There is concern about Mathis for week 1. I am eager to hear a final report on Chase Young for sure. I did watch him warm up tonight, which is always a pretty good sign. I did watch John Allen warm up tonight, and there hasn't really been a hint that they're overly concerned, although he's going to be playing with plantar fasciitis and it will not be healed, by the time it gets around to it. But I don't feel like there's an issue with him. No. So I'm not worried about Kendall Fuller just because no one is like red flagged anything.
Well, we just didn't know. The hard part was, the hard part was we didn't know what was going on fully because I haven't talked to him. And you're right. I watched Chase warm up. The thing is, and he's been out there practicing with just no contact. And Rivera was asked after the game about, because he went to see the doctor on Friday and he was asked about it. Yeah. And he pretty much shot down any talk of anything other than the game. So they weren't going to answer that question now.
We'll find out Tuesday after the 53. He'll be asked again. We'll see how he answers it. And I'm sure he will give us some kind of update.
So when you look at the roster now, after the preseason, is there one area that maybe surprised you more by how it looked during this summer?
I am back to being worried about the linebackers. I was kind of downplaying it because I don't feel like they're going to use a lot of them. And they have these kind of interchangeable parts where Cam Curl and potentially Quan Martin and Derek Forrest to some degree, like, can kind of sort of be linebackers, but play that hybrid-y role. And I'm really kind of outside of the legal stuff. What I want to see what plays out with Jamin Davis next week.
Thursday.
That's coming out next week. So let's see what happens, with that, assuming he's available. I really have less concerns about him, but I do think integration of Barton into the defense, this is why they played so much last week, is a concern for them. Yep. And so I think that group to me is going to be one to watch because the guys who are behind them, Eifler and Harris, are the main two. Mayo, Kalik, like, they don't feel like they're ascending players to starting roles to me. So I am a little bit concerned about it. I still think the depth of the defense, especially on the back end and certainly up front, ought to mask any deficiencies that are there. But the summer did not make me feel great about it. Like, I think we went in going, this is a pretty weak unit that they have, but I don't think it's going to end up being something that hurts them. And now I'm kind of wondering a little bit if this is something that's going to have to improve significantly for the defense to be what I think it might be able to be.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see how Barton progresses. And one of the things that I'm wondering is just watching him play off the double teams and like how that's going to work, because there's sometimes you watch Jamin's a lot quicker playing off those. And forcing and being more aggressive, maybe attacking some gaps. He's been in the defense longer. And so Barton's still learning it. So I'll be curious to see where that goes, because that will be a big thing for them. And now when he was in Seattle, those double teams would get to him, but the tackles couldn't make plays. So if they get to him, then you have Allen and Payne up front. You would think they're going to make plays, but you've got to aggressively attack them too. And that's something that when you start to see him do that is when he's got it. And there were a couple of times, or sometimes this summer, you can tell he's clearly still learning the defense, where he needs to go, et cetera. So yeah, I'm with you there. The big thing for me too, it goes back to the offensive line. I mean, the funny thing is, with like Sam Howell, we've talked before, I don't know how good he's going to be, but I don't fear what he's going to do, if that makes sense. Like, I don't sit there and worry about what he's going to do. I still, the biggest
there's a baseline. I'm with you. There's a baseline here where after this summer, and I talked to Ron Rivera to get ready for the broadcast, and he said, the offense has met expectations and then some, and he was really pointing to Hal. I mean, like, it was an admission that, like, I understand that he was an open question too. He was like basically saying it, and I agree with that. But I'm with you. Like, I don't want to go too far here, but I don't see bad, I was worried with Wentz going into the season, like that this could go really wrong, or, I really liked Heineke, but there felt like there was always kind of a ceiling with him about how good it could actually be. I don't know what this guy's ceiling is, but I don't think the floor is bad. Like, I think he's going to be, hopefully average at worst, and maybe a little better than that. And if that's the case, then, I think that they've got a chance to be extremely competitive very quickly. But I don't want to put too many expectations. I've really liked what I've seen, but I'm with you. Like, you got to show me a lot more than this. And even Rivera said it last week to me. He's like, I don't want him to think he's arrived. Like, that hasn't happened. And I don't think anyone should feel that way, but I'm optimistic about him, and I get what they liked about him after the summer that he had.
And the one guy who will say that Howell hasn't arrived is Howell. That kid, like, he understands the game very well. He understands where he's at in everything. He's just a confident kid without being arrogant. Like, he knows what he can do. He knows what he's done in the past when he is a young quarterback. He's always been, like, at UNC, true freshman throughout his whole life. He always played against older kids. It was always the quarterback versus older kids. So he's always used to being in the situation. He knows that he comes through, but he doesn't ever act like he's arrived. Yep. And I think that's a good thing, because once you do that, like, you start to lose your edge. He's not going to lose his edge. So I don't worry about him in that regard. My big question remains on offense is the line. I mean, I think I like Nick Gates. I think he's going to be good for them. I think that he brings a demeanor that is absolutely necessary. And it's kind of I don't give a bleep what others think about us kind of mentality. I think Sam Cosmi will do what will be fine at guard.
So do I.
All right.
I think he might be better than fine, actually.
And I think I think he will be. And the one thing, like, you saw him even tonight, got moved back a couple times, but he's able to anchor. And I think he's still getting used to some things, but he can play there. And I think
I also feel a confidence in him that has grown.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Like, you could just kind of feel it, that, like, he likes that he knows where he is.
Yeah, and no, you're right.
He also seems to have, like, accepted this might be the best position for me too, which is important here, right? He came in as a tackle. They kept trying to keep him in a tackle. They put him in a guard. I think a lot of us were going, I think he might be better as a guard, but he has to believe that too.
Right.
And once he started doing it, like, I've seen him grow in his confidence throughout the summer too. And I think he's accepting that this could be a really good spot for him. And so I like that side of the line. I think that side of the line is going to be okay. The other side is the one that's more of a question to me.
Yes. And I think that's where, and one of the things, like, and again, I like seeing Nick Gates, but the block, he and like Charles working together tonight. And there's still sometimes you can tell on, like, double team blocks, still learning where a guy how you need to handle that block with this player so they can get off, or you can get off and get to the linebacker or whatever. And those are little things that are still that's still a work in progress. And, like, Leno and Wiley, they have these little nagging injuries. For what Leno, it's a shoulder. For Wiley, it's a calf. That stuff is, I don't think it's jeopardizing their start for the opener, but
no,
but you worry about the time they've spent together, is it enough, and how long will it take? That to me remains the biggest question on the team, because they need to play well, and they,
Sure.
so we'll see. But I feel pretty good about Howell. I feel pretty good about the running backs. I really like Chris Rodriguez.
I do too.
And I say that, like, I mean, Robinson has had a good summer. I think he's going to do well. Gibson's third down back, but I also do like Chris Rodriguez.
I think Robinson's going to be a high volume player. So
Yeah.
for those of you who are going into fantasy drafts over the next couple of weeks, he's the one I keep saying, like, of the people on this team that I think will have, like, be relied upon a lot, get a high volume, probably, if you're, probably get a lot more targets than he's probably accustomed to. It's him. And I actually feel better about him. Back in the spring and the summer, early summer, I was questioning the fit, really. Like, can he do what they're asking him to do? More and more and more, I see it with him. So I think that's kind of progressed really, really well. Gibson is the one where I want to see how he fits into what they're doing in the offense. Like, I think he's the one, to me, where I go, I want to see how that one plays out. Like, clearly he has a role. Clearly, like, he is, if he does not have, a defined role or big moments in games this year, because he is up on a contract, he is going to go down as one of the guys I think that we're going to look back at and go, why couldn't they ever figure out how to make him a prime performer for them? Because we all know the skill set that he has, specifically as a big receiver. And so let's see how it goes. I'm not saying it won't happen, but he's the one I haven't seen throughout the summer kind of grow into whatever the role that I think they envision for him is. So I want to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, me too. And I thought, like, going early in camp, I felt like it was, we were seeing some things. And I think, I like you, I'm wondering, how is it going to look for him? Is he going to be one of those guys where every year in the summertime you hear, hey, we're going to use him more, we're going to do this and do that, and then it plays out the same way? He's got a lot of talent, and then you can make use of it. But I do like Rodriguez, and I do think that he can play and help them. Kid's a tough runner, and I know he had the fumble last week, but what I like is how he responded to the fumble with some tough runs, and that's, you see him lowering the shoulder and getting extra yards all the time. And that's really,
I mean, like, honestly, like, they need Gibson in a skill set like that. But if they had, like, a trio, if Gibson wasn't here and they had a trio of, like, Robinson, Rodriguez, Jonathan Williams, it's like battering ram after battering ram. Like, they all are very strong, tough-nosed, hard, one-cut runners. And, so he's another one. Jonathan Williams, he's another, like, I don't think he's going to make the team, but he might, because he plays on special teams. I don't think he will, just because of a crowded backfield.
I don't see how.
Every time he gets on the field, I watch him and I go, that guy runs hard. I mean, it started last summer with him.
Yeah. No, I don't know how he'd make it either, because I just don't see where the numbers will help him. And, the guys like that were good to have around in case one of those guys got hurt. So I think one of those guys will be on the practice squad. And Gore has done a nice job whenever he's gone in there too.
He did tonight.
It's
for sure.
They had a nice group back there, but I think that's just going to be a hard position for them to do. And so,
the one thing that's missing out of all of it is, I think you'll agree with this, but this is where Gibson's talent comes in, is they don't feel like home run hitters. Like,
right.
But Gibson could be. Like, Gibson's the one where you catch him in space and, like, he's the one that can make a big time play. Robinson and Rodriguez are outstanding running backs, but there's a lot of singles and doubles going on here. Like, are they going to hit any home runs? I think they're going to need some conditions to work out for that. That doesn't downplay that I think Robinson's a very good lead back in the NFL, but I'm not expecting him to, pop off 30, 40, 50-yard runs. Like, I just don't see that happening.
No, and I think the big thing with Gibson is getting him the ball in space. And I will say, like, one of the things that you notice this summer is how many different routes they were having the running backs run and work on. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot. So what we're going to see, we really haven't seen yet. From how they're going to use everybody. So it's really hard to say, but you're right. Like, Gibson had people, they always say, people forget that Antonio ran a 4.3 or whatever it was. He's fast. He's a big dude and he's fast. That's a good combo, and they need to find ways to get him involved.
The summer event Ahsoka is now streaming on Disney+. Witness the thrilling adventure of former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano as she uncovers a disturbing new threat to the galaxy far, far away. Don't miss the highly anticipated Star Wars series, Ahsoka, now streaming only on Disney+.
Between the kids being home and hosting, everything in our house gets used up in summer. With Instacart, I can save money by stocking up on all my favorite summer brands. I save time by getting everything delivered in as fast as an hour. And I save myself a sink full of dirty dishes by stocking up on paper plates for the annual summer cookout. Save more on summer essentials? Spend more time enjoying summer. Add summer to cart. Download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
The other guy that they need back is Logan Thomas, and but he'll be back. He should.
Yeah, he was actually running routes today in pregame. I thought that was a really good sign.
Yeah.
So they keep saying like it's progressing, and they're getting them ready. And I believe them. After seeing this for a couple of weeks when they kept saying that, but we never saw him. You go, how long is this really going to linger? So I think that's going the right way. The other name from that room that I think has made a wildly vast improvement that I'm surprised by is Cole Turner. Like, I know that they've like been very high on him because he's a big target, good hands. But I was concerned, like, this guy's not a blocker for them. So I kind of described him as a big wide receiver. That's changed a little bit here. Like, I don't know point of attack blocking, but backside blocks have been standing out for him in some of these games recently. Yep. He's become not just a good target, but a reliable one in traffic, in the summer. And his mentality's changed. And I know he got hurt last year in the preseason, so maybe it was just kind of unfair to talk about his whole season the way it was. But I came in going, they need Logan Thomas back really badly because I don't see Turner in that same role. And I still don't think he's a premier frontline blocker, but his improvement is vast from a year ago. I trust him way, way, way more than I thought I would at the beginning of the summer. And now I feel like he could be a pretty big contributor for them too.
Yeah. And he's where he blocks well is when he can move. And he'll do the slice blocks where he's coming behind the line, getting the backside guy. He does a nice job there. And he did it. He improved in that area last year too, but on the point of attack, not going to do it. I mean, that's not his strength, but you get him out in space, and he's had a couple blocks out there. If people remember, I think it was the first big run they had against the Browns around the left side. De'Ami Brown has a really good block on that play, and Cole Turner had a really good block on that play, and get him outside. That's where he can help you. And he presents it's like this year, it's all position flex. Last year, the big key phrase was wide catch radius, and he has that. The one thing he has
to that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Wide catch radius.
That's if you have your wide catch radius, if you're playing bingo, if you're playing the wide, the bingo, wide catch radius, you should all put a little marker there. But what he does do, what he has to do is make sure he's very strong after the catch, because he had a couple balls stripped, and that's something that they've mentioned, and where he's, be more stout after you catch the ball. That's it. And, but he will help them. And I think it's funny, Bram, because the guy that they're going to miss, and he wasn't a huge thing last year, but it was Armani Rogers. And that injury, I was talking to someone about him the other day, and it's like, they know, I don't know if he's going to be Travis Kelce, but he would have been a good player in this system.
He was total find. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they don't have him. So there we go. So anything else, Bram? We've talked a lot about the roster. Anything else on your mind about the roster moving forward, whether cuts or anything else?
I would just say, I think this is the best team Rivera's put out there in his 4 years. So, I'm Kool-Aiding it a little bit. Like, I feel really good that they are not going to be what the national punditry has claimed they would be. Felt that way from the spring. I feel more than that now, especially after Hal's summer. I agree there are potential major weaknesses. The offensive line still bothers me a lot, and until I see something different, I'm concerned. I keep saying, I hope it's not a weakness. I don't think it's going to be a strength. If there's somewhere in the middle there, then I think they'll end up being okay. But everybody in the NFL, this is the NFL salary cap league. Everybody's got weaknesses. So this one's theirs. I think it's potentially a big one, but hopefully it doesn't work out that way. But overall, after this summer, and maybe some of it is, seeing them win every week. I know the games don't count, but seeing them win every week, I I feel pretty good about them going into the season. And I think they're going to be as competitive as I thought they were going to be. I think the country is starting to see that a little bit. And if they could just get off to a good start, which they have not done in the first 3 years, and they have a real opportunity to do it with the first couple of games that they're playing, then, you never know what the launching pad is, because they better chalk up some wins early, because at least on paper, the last month and a half of the season could be brutal. Yes. Dallas twice, Miami, the Jets, San Francisco, all of them on paper look like playoffs or more teams. So they better have a really good record by the time they get around to Thanksgiving, or it's going to be a struggle for them to get over 500.
Yes, and I think they've positioned themselves better to have a stronger start than they have in the last 3 years, just because I think the way practices have been conducted, those joint practices, I think they learned a lot more about their roster than they did the last 3 years combined in the summertime. I think that's going to be a big help for them early. Now they got to go out and do it. Bram, thanks for joining me. As always, thanks everybody for tuning in. I will be back Monday morning with a quick look at the cutdown. Plus, I'm going to play a little interview that we did with Jarrett Patterson after the game, just to give you the mindset of a player in his position and, just what gives him confidence that he can play in this league. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.